What is the fastest way you have seen someone ruin their life? 15 to 20 years ago. An ex worked at a dream job type of place. If you make it professionally in that field. This employer is the absolute peak. There is no better place to go. New guy started there. On ex's team. Right out of university. His first day he went to the company store and got all the gear with company's name on it, t-shirt, hat, socks, etc., and proudly put it all on. After work, team took the new guy out to drinks to celebrate his first day at dream job employer. New guy gets way too drunk. Goes outside to smoke a cig. And then takes his penis out and presses it up against the bar's glass window. Penis man's new colleagues, all the bar's patrons, and all their staff see his dick. Ex closed out their tab and got drunk guy home. The bar calls the employer the next morning, complaining about the new guy's dick antics, banning him and anyone wearing company gear. New guy was fired before lunch. On day 2. A cautionary story. Edit. The bar was in a never gentrified, always wealthy part of SF.ca. Patrons were very wealthy people. Entitled, myself, having worked in fine dining in college. I can only imagine the absolute hell those patrons raised about seeing some dipshit's dick while slurping down their third martini. Many of you relate to this story. And have shared about not even wearing something as small as a lanyard with company info on it. This is all great logic. Please keep it up and share that advice. It is especially pertinent when your employer, like the subject of my story, is known globally for children's entertainment. Exposing yourself to anyone, let alone a bunch of connected, rich assholes, is definitely not the move when Pixar signs your check. Dude I know won a $3 million settlement from being hit by a car. Spent it all on heroin and was dead within 3 years. Under 30 years old. Edit. Wow. This really blew up. To answer some of the questions I see in the thread. I don't think he got hooked on opioids due to the accident. This guy did a lot of weed and shrooms and occasionally coke even before the settlement. The money just allowed him to graduate to heroin. How'd he spend all that money? Sadly, he had a bunch of addict friends who he enabled. He'd treat them to free heroin at these lavish parties. A high school friend drove drunk and killed the local doctor of a small town. Last I heard, he was still in prison. I posted this once before. I had a friend that had a promising career got upset and went into full road rage for a woman who forgot to turn her blinker on, and he slightly bumped her back bumper on the freeway, causing her to lose control and flipping over and killing the driver and her 2 daughters. Oddly, it was all caught on his car dashcam and a trucker with his own dashcam that was behind him. He is now doing 40+ years in prison. Post update. I wasn't expecting much attention on this story. Additional details that people keep asking me. I can't say we were close friend or good friends. We hung out during high school years. I may have seen him a couple times afterwards. He moved out of state. Most information I got was from his sister. I do know that he is in jail for what he did. Now I'm not sure if his sister is not giving me the full story, but I do know he definitely received high jail sentence. I know he went to college for marketing. I believe he was interning for high-end sports marketing company. Watched a buddy spend his entire life savings betting on the Paulo Costa versus Adesanya. I begged him not to do it and he lost his and his wife's entire $60K nest egg. She left him immediately with the kids and now he lives at his mom's house. Edit. Wow, this blew up. So a little more backstory. He had been betting on prize fighting for a short while and winning. Nothing outrageous, and heck, I even bet with him on a time or two because it was smaller bets, 1 to 200. He had been winning, probably made a few grand, not sure how much, but he was always saying he won and showing off his bets. So I can confirm he had been winning and his luck was pretty impressive. As far as I know, he doesn't gamble anymore and is just trying to rebuild his life. He lost his wife but does spend a lot time with the kids. Arrive at work on their first day as a temp at around 10 a.m. Caught stealing the boss's wallet at 12:30. Taken away by police at 1 p.m. A close friend of my best friend grabbed his 8-year-old son's new skateboard and took off down a hill in Georgia. Hit a rock. Landed on his head and had permanent brain damage. He lived years before he mercifully died. Had to be restrained the whole time because the damage made him erratic and violent. Wear a helmet. The construction to amphetamines pipeline. I've seen 2 very good and competent men fall to absolute ruin in the space of 4 months because of this. My sister started doing meth and heroin. She went from super smart to completely dumb. By the age of 19 she was already a felon. No one in the family wants to help her anymore cause each time we tried either sending her to rehab or tried getting her sober she would just go back to it. Was supposed to go to college but now she's 22 and stays at different people's houses and begs people for money. Completely cut me and everyone else off from her cause she thinks us trying to help her is us being jealous and not wanting her to be happy in life. The guy who got angry playing basketball and smashed his head, leaving him paralyzed. Edit. This guy. Former friend of mine was arrested for soliciting an 11-yo for sexual favors online and traveling across state to meet her. I never expected him to do that. His girlfriend at the time asked if I wanted to be a character witness and I no-ped out before she finished her sentence. Judge made an example out of him and sentenced him to life. Apparently it wasn't his first SAW offense. I can't believe she even stuck around to even consider looking for people to testify on his behalf. Edit. He got the girl to do stuff to him in his car. He was only caught after her friend saw pictures of her boyfriend and realized he was way too old to be an 11-yo's boyfriend and told the girl's mother. He was 31 when he was sentenced. My daughter's boyfriend. July 4, 2023. Hopped in his car blackout drunk to come see my daughter. DUI and hit and run. He is just about to begin a painful, life-altering process. A senior girl from my college pushed another girl she was friends with off a, approximately 30-foot bridge into water as a joke. Broke her neck and collarbone and she's permanently in a wheelchair. Edit. Holy shit, this blew up while I was asleep. I'll answer some questions. 1. I got feet and meters mixed up, only around 30-foot drop 2. 2 days in hospital for her friend, 2 days in jail for the girl who pushed her. She spent the same time in jail as the victim spent in hospital. It's fucked up. 3. The parents of the victim chose not to press charges. 4. It was not Taylor Smith. 5. I've seen similar stories online but successfully found the actual story, it's not the one that went viral. I wound up having to change the number for my first real cell phone because the previous owner of that number still kept giving it out. Apparently she had just moved, and her old job couldn't get a hold of her to send her last check. Her new job couldn't get a hold of her to get her schedule. Her vet couldn't get her to pick up her cat. I got calls from her leasing company who needed documentation to secure her apartment. Every single day was some new way an idiot was fucking up her finances. Her housing, her job, her pets, her social life, all because she couldn't remember her new phone number. After a month I finally got fed up and had the number changed. Melissa. If you were supposed to be a massage therapist for the PGA Tour in 2013. I hope you eventually got your shit together. Watched a guy gamble $30,000 away in a night and then cried about losing his life savings and security had to get involved and escort him out because he started to get angry at the dealers because all they could offer him was free night stays at the hotel for playing so much, but he wanted free play at the tables, slots, and they refused. I watched this clip on Reddit where these 2 kids were posing with a gun. The girl in the video accidentally shot the boy in the head. She panicked and shot herself. That shit changed me. It all happened so fast. I don't think the clip was longer than 30 seconds. The kid in the National Guard posting Govit secrets online for internet cred. Have a friend who had a drinking problem and got into an argument with a gas station worker while drunk. The worker tried stopping his car by standing in front of it and my friend ran him over and killed him. Wife, career, freedom, everything lost. I'm a lawyer. Another well-respected lawyer in my jurisdiction was involved in an absolutely huge property settlement involving dozens upon dozens of deeds, side agreements, financial documents, yada yada yada. The whole lot, presumably involving literally 100 or so signatures, had been signed off by her client. In the early hours of the morning, having no doubt slaved away for untold hours getting everything ready for the settlement the next day, she must have realized that she had missed getting one signature on one minor document from her client, so she faked it. I can see the pressure she was under and how she probably thought it doesn't matter. My client would have signed it anyway and only didn't because they overlooked it. No one will ever notice. Someone noticed and she went from high-paid property lawyer to never being able to practice again. Just like that. People occasionally ask me to sign things off as a lawyer, and suggest I overlook minor irregularities such as wanting me to witness a signature even though I didn't actually see the signatory sign. Then they get all offended and act like I'm being a stick-up-the-ass perfectionist when I won't do it. My father-in-law is 65. Was married to his wife for 37 years and has 3 daughters. The picture-perfect family from the outside looking in. He was well respected in his career field and was also an interim pastor, deacon at our local church. After he retired, his health started to deteriorate drastically and he started drinking. This past November we learned that he had fell for a love scam on Facebook and had spent his entire life savings. Took out a second mortgage on his home. And opened up numerous credit cards to send this fake person money. All in all, he sent them roughly $300,000. He was truly convinced she was going to move here from overseas and they were going to ride off into the sunset. Leave everything behind. And live happily ever after. Now he is divorced. Lives in a crummy apartment about 45 minutes from his family. And is miserable. He can barely walk and has essentially zero control over his bowel movements. To make matters worse, he has very narcissistic tendencies and thinks that none of it is his fault. And instead blames his ex-wife, claiming that she didn't love him and show him any affection. As you can imagine, this has affected my wife, her sisters, and mother immensely, and caused all sorts of problems and stress over the last 8 months. But long story short, he lost everything. His assets, his family, his health, and happiness. I would be shocked if he's even alive a year from now. An old customer got fired from Uber and DiDi for being slow, arriving with cold food way too often. Comes into my bar the next day with limited edition XO weekend sweater plus jeans. New Apple Watch and new iPhone, all paid cash. Says he took out a payday loan for $10,000 and doesn't intend to pay it back. He'll just cancel the bank account. His exact words, "Who needs credit anyways?" He stopped showing up to the bar after about 3 months, never saw him again. Edit. For those asking, no, I don't think this is some mafia shit. A very stupid decision by a reckless individual. With no way to pay any of it back and incurring crazy debt, interest at approximately 22 years old. Crime. Specifically felonies. My lawyer took out a loan forging my signature. He's doing 15 years in federal prison. I would have given him the $5,000. His kid was very sick and I would have gladly helped him out. Knew a guy in the military that had 18 years in. And was doing online classes to get his MBA. He was in his final semester of getting his MBA. And 2 years away from a military retirement. Then he traveled 1,500 miles across the country to try hook up with a 15-year-old girl. Spent 2.5 years in prison. Was kicked out of the military and his college he was attending. I'm not entirely sure if he could pick up where he left off to get his MBA at the same college, or a different one. But that's probably useless for him anyways now since he's a convicted felon. I don't think having an MBA is going to make employers overlook your felony for trying to have sex with a minor. My husband had a nice job as a high-level retail manager. Before his store closed, he became a lead for less dollar in an inventory company. He was generally considered to be a nice, but quiet. You'd see more of his personality when he was working on computers, self-taught, or video games or pool. General consensus was that he was a good guy, always ready to game with the kids. Less than a month after our 6th anniversary, I found a video on our tablet from a hidden camera in our bathroom that showed my 14-year-old niece nude. It looked like he kept the image on the cloud and would add it to whatever device he was using and then delete it. He just missed that last step. I called the police immediately and he never came home again. They found more images on his computer and a 20-minute video. Full front view of his face. As he tries to hide the camera. He pled guilty and received 40 years with 34 suspended. He will have to register as a sex offender and has some pretty stiff rules to follow. No alcohol. No items that can connect to the internet unless he pays for a company to put monitoring software on every internet-accessible device. The day I found it, I sent him to work with a kiss. I found the images around 11:30 am and had surrendered the tablet and gotten the case started with the police by 11:45. I have told every relationship I've been in, husband included, that the one thing that will make me turn you in and walk away and never look back. He truly thought I would never leave him and was all surprised Pikachu face when I kept my promise. His actions caused him to lose everything he took for granted that he would always. Our daughter was 5 then, and for her he just disappeared one day. Now, I am watching her grow and mature into a beautiful person, and he doesn't get the privilege of even knowing this beautiful child. I'm sure that separation has hurt him a lot. But you don't get trusted with any child. Even your own. After you do something like that. Good riddance. 34 years suspended sentence. That guy who did the AMA or whatever it was after trying heroin once and claimed he had the strength to never do it again. Spoiler alert. He did it again. A lot of times. My cousin, 18F, finished her senior year early. So she was basically just waiting for May to do the graduation and get her diploma. She worked at a lake restaurant and had started hanging out with a bad crowd. At this time she had been smoking a lot of weed and drinking. As well as just being generally reckless all the time. She was my best friend, so she texted me to tell me about everything she did basically. One night she texted me to tell me that she had tried meth and it was the best high of her life, but she will never do it again. Exactly 1 month after that text she overdosed and died. They put her portrait in her graduation seat and her dad got to walk and pick up her diploma. A coworker sent an explicit text to a new hire using the company comm system. She pretended to be interested and then reported him. With a very long thread as proof. Dude was married. With kids. A supervisor. Now. Divorced. Kids hate him. Works a low-level job. In Germany. There was a contestant on the show Wetten Das, translated as Bet That, a few years ago. In the show, statements about crazy talents and activities were presented by the participants. The contestants bet on things they could do and get a prize if they could actually perform the self-proclaimed tasks, talents. One participant bet that he would be able to jump over moving cars. It went wrong and he was left a paraplegic. He has since largely recovered, psychological. Not physical, and is handling it great as far as the public is concerned. But the situation will probably always stick in my mind. Oh. And clearly heroin. The shortcut to ruining your own life as quickly as possible. The numb nut that carved on the Colosseum. One use of meth. Seen so many people and friends jump right off the deep end by just trying it. And after 20 years have yet to jump out of the self-made dumpster fire that is their life. Nasty shit. Meth. Bar fight. Heard a loud commotion for about 30 seconds. Some guy thought this guy was hitting on his date. Suckered punched him. The other guy fell down and clipped the bar. The bar had brass foot rest at the base. Snapped the guy's neck so loud you could hear it across the room. Colleague starts out great at new job. Gets through probation. Then gets out of control drunk at a company party. She makes out with the boss's date and hooks up with another colleague while her husband is there. Fast forward. She's dating this colleague now and their relationship is causing disciplinary measures at work. They decide to double down and sign a new lease together anyways. She then lies about getting poached by a customer to leverage a raise, and when it doesn't work she actually has to quit. Her boyfriend then follows suit by not showing up and ghosting the company. Now he's a stay-at-home stepdad. Oh. Did I mention she has 3 kids? After being with this girl for 6 months and they both don't have a job. Kind of a 2 for 1. It took 4 hours. He woke up. Murdered his grandparents in their sleep. Stole all of the firearms in the house and his grandfather's truck. And fled. I grew up with this dude. He was a genuinely good person. We were friends all of elementary school and most of middle school. He was an amazing friend and always knew how to help someone. But he had a lot of mental health issues. And his religious family believed it was just possession by demons and whatnot. Recently his actual hearing was done. And you could tell how far off the deep end he had gotten. Smiling the whole time they described what he did. Laughed when they sentenced him. And had to be dragged out laughing like a lunatic saying it's over grandpa. It's over. It was during the court trials that we found out his grandparents were apparently sexually abusing him. Something the rest of the family seemingly knew quite well but ignored. And they'd refused to let him leave the house despite him being in his 20s and a legal adult. They isolated him from the world, told him he was possessed by demons, and let his grandparents molest him repeatedly without intervention. I'm honestly not even surprised he did it. I'm just sad it went down the way it did. A guy the first worked with at Papa John's when I was in college bought a gun from a coworker. Our other coworker got robbed delivering a pizza. He told me he wants to see if it works. He went and shot it into an empty developing neighborhood into some trees. The bullets hit a house behind the trees with a family and kids. Nobody was hurt, but they were scared to death. Police immediately came and arrested him before he could even pull off. They were camping out in that neighborhood already since people were coming at night to smoke weed, have sex and shoot guns. SMH. He shot 3 shots. Got 25 years in prison for attempted murder and reckless endangerment. First time ever shooting a gun. We were only 19. This was in 2006. I think about him a lot. We weren't close like that. But he's still in prison over a 5-second mistake 17 years later. Really nerdy kid too. First time ever in trouble. I follow his sister on Facebook. He's unrecognizable now. Imagine McLovin from Superbad who looks like Jason Momoa now with tats on his face. Sad. Also, my roommate a few weeks later was struggling financially and decided to buy 2 pounds of weed to sell with his student loan refund check. Got pulled over and arrested the same day. Got 5 years. Can't make this shit up. A previous classmate of mine robbed and shot a taxi driver in the back of the head when he was 17-14. Edit. I remembered incorrectly. The classmate was 14 at the time. Pretty sure he had dropped out of school, but this was close to 30 years ago. There was a 17-year-old accomplice that planned it but didn't actually pull the trigger. If you want to Google it, LeVar Jones, Lancaster, Pennsylvania should do the trick. The amount of time it took for him to finish his first bump of coke. He was hooked instantly and been chasing it ever since. He's been hospitalized at least once. And as many as 4 times. Due to complications that are hitting him harder and harder. I know a guy who came home drunk to his parents' house. Got in an argument with his stepfather and punched him once. Stepfather died. Guy ended up in prison on a murder conviction. Girl's divorce sent her into a manic episode. Her friends understood. But she lost her medical license, that she had less than a year, because she posted patient information on social media. She lost her job. Made her lose her income, so she lost her home. She decided to stay in Nice hotels, from the mania, and was in debt by the end of 2 weeks. I knew someone who had a full scholarship to an in-state university. He got addicted to heroin. Overdosed. Fell into a coma, and now he's confined to a wheelchair and has the mental capacity of a toddler. It happened within 2 or 3 years. An acquaintance. He had a good job. Nice truck. Mortgage on a nice home. Minimal debt. In a relationship with someone out of his league. Before I knew him, he'd had a DUI. But his attorney got him a plea deal that dropped the DUI down to a minor charge. A real lucky break. All he had to do was stay the course. He could have walked home that night. It was less than 2 miles. But he was too proud to leave his truck at the bar. So instead he wrapped it around a power pole. No one was hurt, including him. The judge who got his case was furious to learn his previous DUI had been pled down. The judge rejected a plea deal and vowed to throw the book at him. There was prison. Then a year on house arrest. His job required a driver license. So that was gone. I don't know at what point in his house arrest he could have started working. But he refused to. His former employer offered him a non-driving job. Less money but still good money. He turned it down because it was beneath him. He said the same thing to 2 jobs his girlfriend single-handedly secured for him. Even after his house arrest. He refused to work. He said he didn't want to. Apparently yelling at his girlfriend to pay his mortgage was better than working. She finally got the courage to leave. His parents found him dead. No one will ever know if he intended to drink himself to death or whether it just happened. His parents blamed the girlfriend. Apparently the world would still be graced by his presence if she had stayed to get hit and yelled at. Please don't drive drunk. Not ever. Not even a little. If you're not sure, just don't. And if you suspect you have the disease of addiction, please get help. I don't really care that this person died. But he hit a lot of innocent branches on the way down. A lot of suffering for no reason. A coach at the school I worked at led the boys' basketball team to state and was awarded Coach of the Year. Comments on the post about his award started filling up with sexual assault accusations from former students. Obviously an investigation was immediately launched and he shot himself in the head by the end of the week. Literally went from being awarded and praised to dead by suicide within days. Left behind a wife and 2 young kids. My rich uncle destroyed his life by getting drunk and killing a woman with his car. For backstory, my uncle was a very successful corporate lawyer. He had it all. Beautiful family. Multi-million-dollar mansion. Fancy cars and constant vacations to any exotic place in the world he felt like going to. That all went away when he got blackout drunk at a holiday party with the law firm and ended up hitting a young woman with his car. Dragging her body for a mile or so. And then running, hiding from the cops. The girl was killed and in his drunken stupor he must have decided it was a good idea to speed at 100+ mph through the city with her body mangled on the hood. They found him later on hiding in a parking garage cowering in the corner. He had abandoned his car as it was completely totaled after he hit a tree trying to flee. He bailed on foot. The guy was always very arrogant. And even now as he serves his time in prison, he got off super easy considering he killed somebody. Having connections and wealth will do that. He doesn't show much remorse for the family of the girl he killed. He is mostly bitter that nobody wants to go visit him. He whines about it apparently. I will never look at him the same again. The girl he killed was a 23-year-old immigrant from Mexico. With dreams of being a nurse and she was taking classes for that. Until his arrogance ended her life. There's so much more I could share about the circumstances surrounding this that would make people's blood boil. He lost his career. His family lost everything they had basically. And worst of all, he ruined another person's family. And yet he hasn't learned his lesson. Had a friend that had the perfect girlfriend. A good career path. And just so many things going his way. Then the dude picked drugs over his girlfriend and basically he gave up on everything for drugs. I haven't heard from the guy in about 7 years, so TBH. I don't even know if he's still alive. A HS teacher from my hometown who was married with children had an affair with her 17-year-old student. Apparently it was going on for over a year before anyone found out. When the whole thing came out, her life was basically over. She lost everything. My old friend ran across the street without looking because her dog was getting attacked by a snake. The car was probably going over 60 miles per hour and it ran into her. She's alive to this day, but she did suffer serious and permanent injuries. This happened years ago, by the way. It was traumatizing for her and everyone, including me, that saw it happen. At that time, I lived in a third world country, so the streets were busy as hell. It was also a rainy day, so it was hard for drivers to see. It was truly no one's fault. The driver also took responsibility. Fentanyl and meth. I have more dead friends than living friends and I'm 28. First at 17. My best friend. Today was his birthday. Choosing the wrong partner. A friend of mine married his love and they had a daughter. But soon that woman found someone better, so she accused him of a variety of things ranging from beating her to sexually assault. Of course the new guy backed that up. So yeah, he lost his job, his house, his daughter and his wife, even though this seems to be better for him in the end. A lot of his friends abandoned him too, but I know him long enough to know that he would never do that and she made that up. She didn't have any proof other than the new guy stating that he saw it. Because of this the judge didn't plead him guilty but said he couldn't visit his daughter till she turns 18 as a precautionary measure. This didn't matter to other people though, because they heard something about him beating his wife, so it must be true. Or so IDK. Singapore here. One Chinese lady ranted on Facebook about a nearby Malay wedding in a public space. According to her, divorce rates among Malay couples are high due to weddings which cost, according to her, only 50 Singapore dollars, 30 United States dollars. She posted that rant on a Sunday afternoon. The backlash against her was fast and furious. By Monday morning 4 government ministers, including our Prime Minister, had spoken out against her. She was out of her cushy directorial position at a major government agency by lunchtime Monday. We take racial harmony in Singapore very, very seriously. My ex decided to touch himself in TJE library of a community college and got caught. The school kicked him out and then he decided to start sneaking around and smoking pot instead of trying to get a job. He now has several thousand in loans to pay back. 2 inappropriate conduct charges and thinks all women hate him because he self-diagnosed himself with DID. 2 of my high school friends went to a strip club during the pandemic. Refused to wear a face mask. So eventually they got kicked out. They were drunk. Got mad and shot at the strip club with an AK-47. 18 and 19 years old. Nobody died. But some people got hurt. Edit. The 18-year-old just had a baby at the time of the shooting. His GF couldn't even grasp the idea of him at a strip club while she was taking care of the newborn. My cousin fell for one of those to catch a predator-style police stings. The day of the sting he posted something on his Facebook about going to have a great night. I even responded saying, "Awesome man, have fun." Well, that night he tried to meet a 14-year-old girl for sex and found a bunch of cops instead. Was charged with multiple felonies. Got kicked out of his Ph.D. program. Lost his job. Lost his wife. Killed himself 2 months later. He was 28 years old and had everything going for him. Great job. Crazy book smarts. A bright future with his family. A guy from the general area I lived in. Him, 18 at the time, and girl broke up. Ended up kidnapping her 3 weeks later and shooting her twice in the head with a handgun he took of his parents' gun safe. Tried driving 5 hours away to his grandparents' ranch to hide the body. Ditched his phone driving down the highway. SWAT team was waiting for him when he showed up at said ranch. Made news headlines in CO. Edit. Reread news article about it and it was actually 3 gunshots. About 16 years ago, the company I worked for wanted to expand into America. To do so they sent me and several of my coworkers abroad. We lived in the US for several years to set it up. When we were there, one of my coworkers became fascinated with, I guess what you'd US gangster culture. He started dressing like a stereotypical gangster. Got tattoos. Said the N-word with a hard R constantly. And even got a gun from who knows there. So it was a nice night. About 3 weeks before we were due to go back. We had set up chairs in a park to drink beers and were pretty buzzed. Suddenly some dude starts shouting at us from a distance. And my friend, with all his logical thinking, concluded that it must be a threat. So he pulled out his gun and opened fire. That guy was a cop. The policeman understandably returned fire. The rest of us dived to the ground and my friend is hit twice. One in his shoulder and one in his leg. It turns out that there had been some kidnapping nearby by some people that matched our general appearance. Which was why the cop started out hostile. I didn't blame him. And it was both his and his partner's testimonies that protected us from any legal trouble. The next few weeks were a blur. But I remember him still being hospitalized when I flew back home. I don't actually know what happened to him after that. My boss told me he's still alive, but he got fired obviously, but I never saw him again. A friend of mine drove his bike without helmet. Had the helmet, didn't bother to wear it. It was late at night. We were having a party at my home and he was coming to join us. It had rained earlier so the roads were wet. His motorbike unfortunately slipped and he fell hitting his head on the curb. Some passerby called the ambulance. We got to know about it early in the morning from his parents. His head trauma caused him to go into a coma. He never came back from it. He was in a coma for a few months and then sadly passed away. He was a chill dude. If only he wore the helmet while driving. Rest easy Delson. Edit. He was an avid biker. Drove his bike across the country all the way to the Himalayas. He used to wear helmet all the time except for that fateful night. I was having a party at my home. You know, barbecue, beer, whiskey and all that. He was gonna join us after work. He had the helmet on him even that day. I will never know why he decided to not wear it that day. Miranda Sings apology video. 2 guys got into an argument at an old job I had. One of them was clearly the provocateur and a bit of a dickhead. But the other snapped and they started pushing and shoving and that second guy punched him. He got fired as a result. He was otherwise a pretty mild guy. I wouldn't say it wrecked his life. But he had a good job and it's an industry where it definitely affected his reputation. Felt kinda bad for him. The provocateur guy got written up. He didn't lose his job. But he did get bad performance reviews etc. And eventually left. But his reputation didn't suffer as much as the first guy. Moral of the story? If you want to punch a colleague, do it after work and not in the office. A former friend of mine got caught sexually assaulting a 9-year-old. I'd say that takes the cake. This is very recent, so while it hasn't gone to court, he's still in jail as the judge denied bail. By smoking K2. Lockdown 2020. Friend got the fatty stimulus payments. Was a red cap. Dude had never seen money like that in his life. Thought COVID was fake. Moved to NOLA. Drank himself to pancreatitis and got COVID. Died before Xmas. Took him less than 9 months. Was barely 35 years old. Edit. Lotta questions. It's a shame. He was a red cap with a lot of money dumped on him by government incompetence with a crazy PPE loan. No. Not $1,200. They shit tens of thousands on this guy. Not any education past HS. Fell into the Q-hole. Thought he knew better than everyone, saying stay home and wear a mask, and had a drinking and whoring problem in NOLA and lost all the marbles he had left and it killed him. Lance Armstrong admitting to doping and lying on national TV. Guy who smoked a blunt at a party that was possibly laced with PCP or something fucky. He lost his mind right after. Started accusing me of stealing his shit and replacing it with identical copies. Thinking I was plotting against him with other people. It was scary as fuck since I lived with him. Edit. So I had different living arrangements a few months after. I'd run into him on campus sometimes and he'd seem fine but different than he used to be. More timid. But we'd exchange numbers again and say let's do something, and I didn't see him again. According to social media, it seems like he's doing well. At least no indication to the contrary. I believe he graduated, but not 100% on that. A former friend I knew lost a good job by stealing from it and sold everything he stole for drugs. Just last week he got in trouble for pedophilia by soliciting a minor and other shit. Dude I worked with came back after a weekend and told everyone he had tried meth. And he liked it. Like a month later he came into my workspace and asked for a pair of pliers. I gave them to him and he pulled a tooth right there in front of me like it was nothing. He quit shortly after. Not sure what happened to him. He was very young. Like 20 maybe. A few high school classmates. Dan, not his name, just started hanging out with bad peers. One weekend, the guys decided to hang out at Dan's house. They ordered pizza and told Dan to get change for $100. They left Dan's house to get drinks. Pizza arrives, and while exchanging the order with Dan, the other guys run out from the bushes. They start beating up the delivery driver. Dan didn't know they were going to do that and tried to stop them. Yet, none of them knew the driver was legally carrying. Dan got shot and died OTW to the hospital. The other guys got arrested and spent 3+ years in jail. They were supposed to graduate in 2 months. Guy the first knew in high school slept with a girl at a party. He was 18 and she said she was 18. too. Turns out she was 16, and when her dad found out about it, had the guy arrested and charged with SAW of a minor. Got sentenced to 13 years and has to register. Sad part is, the girl testified that she lied about her age to sleep with him. He was a star athlete and had a D1 scholarship. Lost everything. This was 20 years ago, and last I heard he's back in prison on another charge. I've seen a lot over at Wall Street bets where people buy puts and literally burn their life savings. I watched my best friend from childhood get mad at me for his girlfriend shitting herself on a lawn at a party I was at. He wasn't, and throwing a fit at me, next day, and ruining our friendship over it because I wasn't watching her. Which was a no-win for me. If I'd been coddling the girl, he'd had been just as mad, no doubt about it. They got married at like 18 or 19. Dude burnt his life being tied to some fake-ass big-titty goth type. She was fucking worthless. I even went over a couple years after the fact like, yo, we good? And he was not. And that bitch was sitting in his lap. His teeth were all broke. Think they started freebasing meth. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.